Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Caleb. Usually it's me on location. This week it's you on location.
Yeah, I am wrapping up my time in Mexico. So a little bit of an early anniversary trip for the week. So,
and how's it been going?
In the background, it's probably my wife packing her stuff.
Gotcha. You already packed?
Basically. It's just, how we are. You shove everything in the suitcase and you're good.
Yeah. Men are. Women got to make sure everything's in there. That stuff. Yeah, totally. So, but did you have a good time? Has it been a nice time?
Oh, yes. It's very hot. It's very humid. That was expected, though.
Yeah.
But it was nice, pool time, beach time, the whole deal. So, and nice to cash in on a lot of credit card travel points.
Excellent. It's the same place you went to on your honeymoon, correct?
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes. So got to do some of the same stuff and some different experiences. Saw like Chichen Itza, which was pretty cool, and swim in a cenote. And so it was a good time.
It was a good time, but not as much fun as Laguna Seca was over the weekend.
Yeah, no joke. We have a race that we both thought, that's going to be really boring, kind of a boring end to the season, bring on Nashville 2024. And this was way more entertaining than I think we ever could have imagined. Scott Dixon gets the win, even after an early penalty. It's just the penalty summary. I'm looking at the box score, and it's like half the page. So he was able to get through all of that, had the drive-through penalty for avoidable contact on lap 12. Again, he pulls this off. This is third win in 4 races for him. So Scott Dixon with an impressive win. Plus we have silly season news. Plus we have a new race to talk about for 2024. So a lot to get to this week.
Let's do it.
So let's start with the Firestone Grand Prix of Monterey at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. Scott Dixon gets the win. I think the number one takeaway for me from this race, unfortunately, once again, is race control.
My number one.
There's so much going on. Like, what's a penalty? What's not a penalty? I mean, dare I say, Dixon kind of got screwed on that early call.
Yes, he did.
I don't really know what he was supposed to do there. And he said as much on the radio. And you had so much stuff. I mean, the penalty list is seriously so long. It's unbelievable. And the fact that, some people get restarted back to the field. Some people get a drive-through. Some people get a yield position for blocking. Like, consistency in the type of call, consistency on, what is and isn't a block. It made for an entertaining race with all the chaos. I'm good with one chaos race a year, and this clearly was by far the chaos race this year. Didn't expect it to happen. I guess we should have with a green track. And into the season with guys switching teams, everyone just kind of going for it. But, man, race control once again kind of stuck their foot in this one. I
don't understand what the series needs to see or experience before they get serious about race control. Like it's almost become it seems like they're tuning it out. Like they're just accepting it. Well, race control is going to be inconsistent and it just is what it is. When it shouldn't be. It's a controllable aspect of the sport, yet it seems like they don't care.
Yeah. No, it seems like you can, change who's in race control, have consistency in your calls, and instead they just seem content with running it how it is. And in a way, it's like, are we taking ourselves seriously as a sport here, or is this just kind of back to being a good old boys club and racing? Because it's kind of how it feels.
It does, and with every no call on this driver and a call on that driver, it just brings up natural animosity on potential favoritism, this, that, or the other. It may not be there, but it presents the idea that is something, and it just you mentioned it in terms of hurts the respectability of your sport. Part of sport are penalties or fouls or whatever, and there are clear delineations between what is a penalty, what is a foul, and what isn't. And it just seems like IndyCar, this is the thing in the NFL, is what is a catch? Nobody still understands is what a catch is in the NFL, but at this point, it just seems like that's where we're at, the arbitrary calls and direction of race control from one weekend to another, from one incident to another. There's just no consistency other than the fact that they're inconsistent.
Graham Rahal said it best. He tweeted, consistency, race control, consistency. 1 weekend lead pits open, the next you don't, consistency. And yeah, I can't believe I didn't even get to that aspect, because that was another thing where it's like, okay, Palou benefited a few weeks ago. This week he doesn't, but and I get it. People say, well, it's because there was contact versus a car off track, but shouldn't all cautions be treated the same, right? I guess that's my issue with that.
Right. Well, we've talked about keeping the pits open and all that stuff, and I know it can get a little tricky when you're at a road course or a street course or road course in particular about, okay, you can keep it open because they can clean it up at this end of the track. It just needs to be a blanket yellow across the board, and unfortunately that's not what we're getting. And it was fitting that in the final race of a season full of race control gaffes, we had the ultimate race control chaos at Laguna Seca.
Absolutely. What's your first take?
Well, I was going to talk about Scott Dixon. Let's just talk about Chip Ganassi Racing in general.
Yeah.
Because they end the season with, 8 wins? 7 wins, I do believe. So Marcus Ericsson had 1. Scott Dixon had 2, we had 3. So it was 8 wins.
3
total. And then Palou had 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. So 9 wins for Chip Ganassi Racing. 9 of 17 races won.
They won 10 of 18 as well. If you
go to last year with Alex Palou. So 10 of the last 18, 9 of the of 17 this season. The dominant performance we saw out of Chip Ganassi Racing. I don't know if we're giving it the due that it needs to, because this is a team that, while we know they're a championship team, I think in recent years we had looked at Penske for good reason as that power, that number one, but it is clearly Chip Ganassi's series right now, and they proved it with their 3 drivers this year winning over 50% of the races.
And winning the last 4 races of the season, too.
Correct. Dominant at the end, of course, win the championship, and just very impressive. When we looked at this team just a couple years ago and you said, man, where are they going to go when Scott Dixon is done? And you looked at Felix Rosenquist they brought in, and Ed Jones, and the great experiment with Jimmy Johnson, and you said, man, and Max Chilton, where is this team going? Who's next? It seems like this team is on as solid of a footing going forward as any time in recent memory, because Scott Dixon has proven that, he's still Scott Dixon to the sense that he can win races and compete. And then, of course, Alex Palou. So even with losing Marcus Ericsson in the silly season, man, this team is looking very, very strong going into 2024. And I'm not saying that I didn't expect Chip Ganassi Racing to win the championship and win races. I just didn't expect this type of dominance this season.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it, 9 races, that's more than half the schedule.
Just insane. And all 3 drivers winning races, too. It's not just one guy. So a very impressive performance out of Chip Ganassi. What's your number 2 going out of Laguna Seca?
My number 2, so I want to talk about something a little different. But, again, something, I don't know, it's getting into semantics, and I get how they set it up. But Honda dominated this season, right? I mean, they absolutely dominated the season. But because of the engine rules, they didn't win the engine manufacturer standings. Now, I mean, for Honda, you probably care about winning the Indy 500 first, having the winning driver in the championship, which they had that with Palou, then the engine manufacturer standings, which Chevy won, despite the fact that Honda dominated. And I get it, the engine rules and whatnot, you're trying to, 1, provide a cost savings, and 2, try to make it fair, you shouldn't count points. But it's just, I don't know. And I get it, this is not a huge thing that people care a lot about. I just thought it was kind of silly that's how the standings worked out, and that Chevy, who won way less races, comes away with the manufacturer's championship.
Well, it's all about
Chevy won 5 races.
Right. I mean, it's all about how much they value wins in the series. And we've talked about that before on the podcast about should the winner of races get more points. And yes, but then we look at too how that affects the manufacturers championship and say, well, it should wins mean more because of that, or should they have their own maybe different point system to make sure that wins are getting more, or if the Indianapolis 500 hits more or something like that. So yeah, I agree that in the sense of the manufacturers championship, it was a little skewed, but I guess they're using the same point system, I guess, as the drivers themselves in the point standing. So it maybe reflects on the issues with that.
And again, so like Scott Dixon's wins late in the season didn't count because he was on a 5th engine. So it just
then you're
kind of a weird setup. I don't know. To me, like you win races, you win the title. I like the penalties for the grid positions. That's enough. I don't feel like that should not count in terms of the engine manufacturer's championship.
Yeah, and when you look at it, Chevy's not happy because they did, or Chevy's happy because they won the 500.
Yes.
So that's really all they kind of care about. I mean, yeah, they'd like to win.
Right.
They'd like to win the manufacturers championship, but they're in it to win Indy 500s, and they did that. So I don't think there are too many long faces in the Chevy camp.
No. All right, what's your number 2?
Well, let's look at the race in general, because you and I were pretty vocal about the boredom that we've come to expect at Laguna Seca. Was it a better race, and was that quote unquote better race because of the racing or the lack thereof of racing in terms of all the incidents? How do you feel with the resurfacing and all that Laguna Seca? Did it race? Did it improve the product?
It improved the entertainment. I don't think I was entertained. And again, a race like that, I'm good for 1, maybe 2 of those a year. But overall, you don't want all your races to turn into just a chaotic crash fest. But new track, drivers, changing teams, as I mentioned, the physicality, like the physical nature of, they set a track record by over a second. Lundgaard ended up with the track record, the new track record over Elio Castroneves, who had it before. Back in the kart era. So that, I think, played an aspect. And then the tire wear just wasn't as big as people expected it to be. So all those things were factors. I think with this, the biggest thing, so when you look at the stats, 432 on-track passes, 101 passes in the top 10, 36 in the top 5, records for IndyCar at Laguna Seca. But I think the biggest thing when you look at this is, was it so chaotic because it was the final race of the season? Or was it chaotic because of the track? Or was it chaotic because it's so much faster than what they've raced in previous years? Or is it a combination of all three?
Yeah, that's the big thing with me is it was more entertaining, but I felt like it was just because of the incidents. And maybe you could say, well, that's a factor of the track, and the track, okay, I guess it's better than one caution and just a procession. That's for sure. But once again, I went away going, I wish there was a better race to end the season. And some people will say, well, you had 8 cautions? You could potentially get that in Nashville next year. So if you're into cautions at the final race of the season, then you got them. But I just still didn't feel like it had that unpredictability that Nashville is going to provide. And that's what I want for a final race of the season.
And for all the drivers and fans complaining about, you want something. Well, I think it's more the drivers, not the fans, but complaining about, you don't want unpredictability. You want something predictable. What makes ovals so predictable? I mean, we've had ovals as a season finale. We've seen crazy things happen over the years. So I just think this was a change of pace. And I guess because it was not the predictable processional race we expected, I think we both viewed it as more entertaining. But I completely understand people saying that the race was a joke. I can understand that opinion.
My thing would be anybody that's drivers, fans, whatever, saying they want predictable. Racing is unpredictable. I mean, even when we talk about Formula One, and yeah, it's predictable that Max Verstappen's going to win, but anything could happen in the sense of a mechanical or anything. So even predictable can sometimes be unpredictable. What is your number 3?
Number 3. So this is where I want to get in kind of into the weeds here. Nathan Brown had a really good story on IndyStar.com talking about this, but Devlin DeFrancesco, who's running well, then got hit and had, I think, gearbox issues, then eventually got held in pit lane. So he lost the final leader circle spot, at least that entry did, the 29 entry, by 1 point to Yuri Vips. And Vips, who was involved in that contact opening lap, and then his crew got him back out there to finish 24 laps down. Now, DeFrancesco finished the race, but was 4 laps down, didn't get that next lap in the pits. He was sent out, and then an official sent him back because he was running so slow on track late in the race. And he was having a good race. He probably could have finished top 10, 12, 15, somewhere in that range until those issues. But I don't know. Like, do you like that move? I mean, he didn't get a chance. Like, he came into the pits, he didn't get another chance to work out the problem. Like, I get that he had the problem, or he had issues, but then they were going to send him back out, and just him essentially doing a lap, as long as he's not getting in the way, like, that's not a problem. I mean, it's not as bad as Elio spinning out and almost taking out Palou,
right?
Which we saw happen.
It just felt like maybe too harsh.
Yes,
and
that's kind of my takeaway, because like that 1 point made the difference in the leader circle. Now we don't know what Andretti's going to do with that. There are rumors that they're going down to 3, and then now there are rumors they could be going to a 4th car with some money. I think that was the latest thing I read in the racer mailbag, talking about Marshall Pruitt saying they were set to follow suit with Kirkwood, Herta, and Ericsson, and then some big money offers were received to keep the 4th running. And sticking with 4 became an option once more. Basically, it's unclear what they're going to do with that entry. But all of this is just, I don't know, it felt way too harsh. Like, literally, IndyCar, I guess the way Nathan Brown explained it, so you come into the pits and they count that lap even if you haven't crossed start-finish line. Like, they count that that next, like, completing that lap. And so literally all he had to do was be released from the pits, and this completely changes the result. It felt too harsh, like it was almost too controlled by IndyCar.
Right, and the fact that leader circle money was on the line is pretty big. Now, I don't feel sorry for Andretti too much, because they're the only team grandfathered into leader circle where all 4 cars are eligible.
Correct.
But at the same time, it kind of hurts, particularly when you're looking at trying to keep that 4th car on the grid if there's money there. I agree. My number...
And with more money, too. Let's not forget there's going to be a jump from about $910,000 per car to $1.3 million in 2024. So, I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, right, which is, I guess that's great. I almost would take that money and expand the leader circle, but that's me. I think if you put more than 22 or whatever it is, but it's not my money, so what do I know about it? But
all right, you're number 3.
Yeah, number 3. Let's talk about the Rookie of the Year and how that went, and when we made our picks at the beginning of the year, and now what has happened at the end of the year. You said, well, Marcus Ericsson, despite not racing the full schedule, is going to win Rookie of the Year. He finished 8th at Laguna Seca and was as advertised throughout the season. I think Agustin Canapino surprised us in how he was able to come in and adapt as quickly as he did. But Marcus Armstrong definitely was the premier rookie driver, and the standings reflected that, and he had a good, strong top 10 finish in his final race of his rookie season.
Yeah, Marcus Armstrong. I mean, I said this going in because, one, I thought there'd be a chance he'd at least be able to run Iowa and or Gateway because of how they were very specific in saying Sato's only running Texas and Indy, and then everything after that was to be determined. And I thought, maybe they'll kind of change their mind, especially because Armstrong ran so well. But, I mean, this was close. I think it would have been closer had Canapino not had the damage late in the race. I mean, he was looking at a top 5 finish and ended up 14th. But Armstrong, I mean, you look at his rookie campaign, really the only really, really bad race was at Road America, and that was more on his team, kind of taking him off strategy and in a way ruining his race. It was looking like another top 10 result. He struggled in Indy GP2. I think he got caught up in that early mess. Portland had an issue in the pits. But, I mean, this is a guy who had a handful of top 10 finishes, going to be full-time next year. Really impressed with what he did this year. And maybe Chip's found their next great Kiwi driver.
Maybe. And the rich get richer when we look at Alex Palou and Scott Dixon and now Marcus Armstrong. Now, we'll see him on the ovals next year, which will be a big step for him. He never did. Never was able to get in at Iowa and Gateway, which, as you mentioned, thought maybe was a possibility, but was still able to win Rookie of the Year, and very impressive. Overall, when you look at this rookie class and you look at Marcus Armstrong and Canapino and Benjamin Peterson and Stingray Robb, it's mixed bag. I think you look at it and you say, okay, this guy has a future. This guy has overperformed. These guys are going to struggle. And I think it's pretty easy to divide the four into those respective categories.
Yes. And I think we were impressed with Armstrong, but he came in with a really solid resume. So I guess we shouldn't be too surprised.
With the best team.
Canapino, what?
With the best team.
Well, yeah, that helps.
That helps tremendously.
I mean, he came in and we're like, is this guy going to be, Jimmy Johnson, like levels of off the pace to start the year and maybe get better at the end? And then he hit the ground running right away. I mean, yes, he never had a top 10 finish, but 2/12 to open the season. The 14th at Laguna Seca was good. He also had a 12th in Toronto. So, like, the races where you thought he'd really struggle, in particular the street circuits, at least with the ovals, he had a couple of test days at Texas, obviously tons of track time at Indy. And Indy was running well until he just got caught up in a crash late in the race. He performed quite well, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with what he did. And it just goes to show you, having a lot of experience in a car as a racer obviously means something, and maybe that opens the eyes for other teams to look beyond just, the ladder and F2 as far as feeder options. And we've seen that with Scott McLaughlin, right? Great driver,
right?
Dominated, different kind of car, but he's adapted, and he's a championship contender now. So it just goes to show you the experience and having a good resume does mean something. It doesn't just mean, and not that I'm saying we take away from guys who are winning in lights and being factors there, but I think it just goes to show you what that means as far as having the experience and coming in. And hopefully we do, though, get to see Christian Rasmussen, who won in Indy Lights, to be a part of the series next year.
Yeah, that's definitely the hope, but I think a mixed bag for this rookie crop. You look at Stingray Robb, his struggles, Benjamin Peterson, his struggles, and you go, where do they go from here? And who knows, could they be one and done in the series? Who knows at this point? But Marcus Armstrong clearly looks like a guy that's has some staying power in the series. So that's our three things, wrapping up the final race of the 2023 season, Caleb.
Yeah, and a couple other notes. So Rasmussen will test September 25th with Ed Carpenter Racing at Barber. $850,000 scholarship. Notice how that's significantly more than what Linus Lundqvist got.
Uh-huh.
Guaranteed 2 tests, Texas Oval in the 500 Open test, and 2 races, the 500 and one other in 2024. So congrats to him on that. And then some other notes. Will Power, winless this year. Last time he went without a win back in 2006, which was the same time that Marco was celebrating his first career victory at Sonoma. That's that from Chad 200. David Malukas turns 5, to put it in perspective. And then Pato Ward had 4 runner-up finishes this year. Since 1970, only drivers with at least 4 runner-up finishes during winless season. Mario Andretti had 4 in 82. Bobby Rahal 5 in 1990. AJ Allmendinger 4 in 2005. And, of course, Pato this past season. So never could break through for Pato, but was always at the front all season long. Very
impressive throughout the season. So good to see. And he's definitely going to be starting off on the right foot heading into next season.
For sure. All right, let's talk TV ratings. So first off, for the race itself, not great.
Which we expected.
500,000 viewers, 538,000 viewers for the season finale, which is up from last year at 507,000. So at least it was up, right? But when you're looking at 500,000, I mean, that's a real struggle going up against week one of the NFL season. But the overall positive side, the most watched campaign in 12 years now. For a while, it's most watched in 2008. So lost a little ground at the end. But each race averaged an audience of 1.32 million viewers. It was 1.39 million in 2011. 2% growth year over year from 2022. And then some more positive notes. 13 races on NBC averaged 1.47 million, up 4% on last year. 8 races broke the 1 million mark for average viewership. And then including Peacock-only Toronto, 2023 averaged a streaming audience of 58,000, which is up 15% from 2022.
It's pretty impressive. Up is up. We say up is up here on the podcast. So whether it's 2%, 1%, 100%, 0.00001%, up is up. And IndyCar got it done. And we knew that the season finale was not going to draw as much as usual because of going against the NFL. That's why me and Caleb continue to say, yes, IndyCar needs to get out the way once the NFL starts and college football starts, because it is just murder on the ratings, and that's proven by what we saw at Laguna Seca. We said, if it got up to 700,000, it'd be incredible, but it got a touch over 500,000, finishes with the highest rated season since 2011, and it helps to have a lot of races on network. But even the streaming numbers, I think, were interesting, and we saw those released as well. What was it, a 15% jump in viewers on stream, which is only going to continue to rise as we go forward.
Absolutely. And then top 10 markets, obviously Indy number one for the season, 3.26, Knoxville 1.82, Louisville 1.52, Greenville. This is the one that's always fascinating to us, right? Greenville, I believe, in South Carolina, a 1.39. We always joke about Darlington, or what's the other one we always joke about that's closed?
Which one? Darlington and Rockingham?
Rockingham, yeah. Yeah, we always joke about those.
Yes.
Fort Myers, 5th, Dayton, Ohio, 6th, Milwaukee, 7th, Cincy, 8th, Detroit, 9th, and also tied for 9th, Richmond, Petersburg. So, you have a race in Detroit, you have a race in Indy, a race not far from Dayton, Ohio, obviously not far from Fort Myers, and then you're going to add a race in Milwaukee. You add a race in Richmond, you add a race in Greenville. I don't know about that one.
Road and street, a street course everywhere of this top 10.
Yeah.
That's what I'm proposing.
So, overall, up is up. I think that's a positive sign, and that kind of transitions into the made-for-TV event that is the next kind of big talking point. Yes, we had silly season announcements, but nothing really a big surprise over the weekend. But I think the big surprise, I guess we should have seen this coming, but the IndyCar race at Thermal, it was announced on Sunday before the race, a $1 million all-star race at the Thermal Club coming next year. They'll have 2 heat races, top 6 advance, $1 million prize to the winner. And then this will be on March 24th on NBC, practice and qualifying the previous 2 days. So they announced this for the Thermal Club. They'll have an element of, some of the residents paired up with teams, and then they'll do some sort of charity offering as well with this, kind of a made-for-TV event. But Laguna Seca expected to be in June next year on the calendar, so we have that to look forward to then. Obviously, the Nashville season finale. So overall, this is a good event. Yeah, it comes during March Madness, but it's not the first weekend, so I don't think you're completely out of sight, out of mind in that aspect. And you get another race on the schedule, and you finally get an all-star race. Like, I get limited tickets, and fans are upset about that, but this is like a one-off. If you're doing multiple races like this, I understand the reason to be upset. But with just one event like this, I think I'm totally cool with it, and I'd say I'm embracing it. I'm excited for that.
I'm actually surprised at the negative feedback that some people have about this event. I didn't look at it, and admittedly, I wasn't on the Twitter machine for a couple days, at least on race Twitter, and looking at it. But I thought, like, I didn't see the problem. I thought this was everything good. You have a lot of money being invested into the series. If you can get some of these guys, this is the thing. It's all about schmoozing people. That's what Thermal is all about, going out there. And if you can schmooze the right people, you have another investor in a team, or a sponsor for the series, or an investor in the series, or whatever. And that's what it's for. And it's not for you and me. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm really surprised at some of the negative. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised with IndyCar fans,
yeah,
right? Maybe I shouldn't be.
IndyCar fans?
Yeah, but I mean, I think you and I are as practical as it comes in terms of the positives and negatives of the sport, and I don't see any negative here. I'm surprised other people do, but then again, coming back to the fan base.
Yeah, I think this is a really good opportunity and option for IndyCar to try something different, something we haven't really seen before. So I'd say I'm excited for that option, that opportunity, because, I mean, it's nice to have new events that you're actually looking forward to.
And it's another weekend with cars on track, right? And there's such limited test time that anytime these cars can get on track is a positive, and you're going to have some sort of relationship where you're partnering up some of these really elite of California, of Silicon Valley into the series to be partners, quote unquote, with some of these teams. I just have a hard time finding something bad about this because people can't just buy tickets. It's not like a ton of people are going to go to this anyway. Let's be real. There will be some tickets available, and it's going to be on network television too. That's a huge thing as well. So just have a hard time finding the negative in this, but by God, IndyCar fans can do it.
Yeah, that kind of says it all as far as that. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, you add a race, the top five are splitting their winnings, with a Thermal Club member, and again, the charity aspect is to be announced. Everyone expected to compete. But, like, for the teams, I guess I understand the cost aspect when there's only a payout to the top five, but if this is part of getting your leader circle contract, like, you're obligated to go. That's just how it works.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a good thing. And not only do you have then quote unquote spring training at Thermal, now you'll have this race as well, and it can be very advantageous if you just land one serious investor to a team, to create a team, to finance the sport in some way. Then it's a victory. It's a win. And even if it doesn't, it's an all-star race. It's about time IndyCar had one, and I like one at the beginning or the end of the season more than smack dab in the middle of it. And so this gives IndyCar something that I think a lot of us have wanted to see, and maybe not in the traditional way and how we were thinking. But at the same time, I think this is definitely a positive for the sport.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk schedule. So
let's do it.
We have Thermal now, March 24th. We have Laguna Seca moving to June, most likely. Mark Miles said, I could see us running one, maybe two or three races abroad in the fourth quarter of the calendar year if it all works out. We're talking with Argentina right now, no secret about that. So it could be October of 2024. That is comments he had to business. And then IndyCar closing in on the 2024 schedule. So this from Marshall Pruitt, a return to the legendary Milwaukee Mile. Where have I heard that before?
Who's been saying that?
Seca to June. The deletion of the second IMS road course race. Finally, Nashville, of course, going to be the season finale. The postseason non-point trip to Argentina. That they're awaiting formal confirmation. We expect that to be in October. And then they're also finalizing an extension for Toronto. That expected to be ratified in an upcoming city council meeting, according to Pruitt. And then once that is finished, the schedule will be released. So Mark Miles saying it'll be probably another 2 weeks. Now, this was obviously coming last weekend. So we should probably get it as soon as sometime next week. So it's looking positive. We're seeing some changes. We're seeing some additions. And as far as the race, talking about Argentina, one aspect, though, of note that I found interesting that Pruitt had, Mark Miles saying that Argentina has been through a national election, so a little more work needs to be done to make sure that all the arrangements will be in place.
It's always something, right? It's always something.
Yeah, that's always the thing that gets in the way.
That's
a look, though, at the schedule for 2024, and again, we could get this released as soon as next week.
So basically, if we're looking at additions and subtractions, we're looking at the second road course race going away and the addition of Milwaukee. So you're taking away a road course and you're adding an oval. And you're adding, in all likelihood, an exhibition race at the end of the season. And you're adding an all-star race at the beginning of the season. So effectively, you're looking at a 19-race schedule with 17 points-paying races.
And also, though, you wonder, do we have a night race again? Like, rumors Gateway could be a night race. I mean, that's obviously something to kind of think about as far as a change moving forward. But that's something to think about. And then Bruce Martin had a great article. I don't know if you caught this on NBCSports.com. There's so many good nuggets.
I did, yeah.
In this, as far as what Bruce was able to report. So, I mean, just absolutely outstanding reporting. Talks everything from the TV contract to the schedule to everything else. There's just a lot of info in here. Some of the highlights is that, first off, Mark Miles is really positive as far as, I mean, we talked about Portland. He brought in more sponsors, brought expanded new suites, put them in a better position, had new video boards. The suites sold out. Attendance, Miles was impressed with attendance at Portland. And a fan, I think, told us that they spread out. Like, for Formula E is just the main grandstand.
Right.
So I think that's why. So, and they're looking at 22 to 24% increase in attendance across the series. I mean, that's huge.
Absolutely.
So that's a major positive aspect. But obviously the TV numbers were positive going back to 2011. And then the championship with the schedule, where things stand. I mean, that's another big positive. Monterey will be after the Indianapolis 500, end of June. So that's kind of the timeline for that. Obviously, you have the Olympic gap. And then Milwaukee says Milwaukee's likely. And then going back to, Penske will probably be the promoter for that. And they're going to, they think they can make it successful. They want to make it Penske-esque. They're going to promote it. They obviously do that at Detroit. They do that at Iowa, and they do that at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then wouldn't confirm as far as the last year of the IndyCar, NASCAR doubleheader IMS. I mean, I think we kind of see where that's going. But as far as a future venue, not an IMS for a doubleheader, Mark Miles says there's a very good chance there's a combined event by 2025. Found that interesting.
I would imagine the next NASCAR IndyCar combo will be at an oval. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah.
I would
Texas
agree.
Is my best guess.
Yeah, I could see that. We'll see.
Texas or a short oval.
Yeah, Texas or Iowa. I think NASCAR's eyeing Iowa as a potential at some point, and those two would be my leaders. Yes, I would agree.
And then as far as 100 days to Indy, I mean, he said this before, but again, just more confirmation. He believes it will return. Met IndyCar's expectations. Average 500,000 viewers per episode for the 6 episodes. And then did say they're not happy with international distribution. I should have some good news about international distribution of season 1 of 100 Days to Indy quite soon. So that's obviously important. And then the leader circle, more money. We talked about that earlier. And then increase on cars on the grid. Miles says IndyCar is close to the limit of cars they would like to see, which, I mean, I would agree. One negative, the search for a third OEM has been paused. Basically, they're focused on the hybrid for right now.
I would imagine, yes, that you can only keep searching for so long before you're like, all right, let's just let's take a break here. It's like when you're doing a project at home, and yeah, you have to get it done, but at some point you reach me like, I need a break and separate from it. So I'm sure if a engine manufacturer called IndyCar today and said, hey, let's talk, they would. But I think you're not seeing an active pursuing of IndyCar in terms of trying to bring somebody in. They need to focus on making sure they get the hybrids right and all that stuff. So in that respect, I don't blame them one bit.
And then a couple other notes. So they want to sell out the Indy 500, and I'd say they could pull that off in 2024 with Kyle Larson coming in. And then add a race on the East Coast, which is an obvious missing gap. Miles saying we would like to be on the East Coast, so we will keep looking for an opportunity there.
East Coast, so we'll keep an eye on that, see what happens.
Yeah. But overall, just a lot of good stuff. Again, Bruce Martin, NBCSports.com. You can check that out and read the full article. So that's a look at the schedule and some notes. Now let's get into silly season stuff. No surprise, David Malukas confirmed at McLaren in that third car. I mean, this was one that I don't think we necessarily saw coming from far away, and then as it got closer, this was the option. So congrats to him on that. McLaren reorganizing their engineering this offseason. I already have that article. It's not even the offseason.
Yeah, we
so
can't wait to read about all the other teams that are reorganizing things behind the scenes.
Yeah, not a good sign. Not something that breeds confidence, I would say.
No, but we can agree that it's needed.
Yes, it is needed. It's absolutely needed. So that's one of the stories. Now, Ryan Hunter-Reay will not return full-time. He's working on the Indy 500 and some other races. That's kind of his plan. The other races being outside of IndyCar, so don't expect him to see him at ECR full-time next year. Graham Rahal closing in on a new deal at his father's team. No surprise. I think there was a possibility we thought he could leave, but obviously that team's turned things around, and I think he's shown himself well this year, especially in the second half of the season, to try to put some momentum again for next year.
Didn't end the way he wanted at Laguna Seca, but what a turnaround since May.
Yes, absolutely. Other notes on where things stand for Romain Grosjean. I mean, was that it in IndyCar, right? I mean, that's a possibility.
Yep.
So elsewhere, Juncos wants to keep Agustin Canapino. Callum Ilott, it confirmed before the race he's coming back, but then you have the social media firestorm, the Argentinians attacking him. Ilott took his Twitter, and I think his Instagram as well, private, just because of the comments. Second time we've seen it this year, and what was notably different was that Juncos had a very condemning statement earlier in the season when this happened after Long Beach. This time, it was pretty weak. Not worded very strongly.
Well, I think it didn't help the first time, obviously. So I just don't know what you do about crazies on social media.
Yeah.
It's here it is. It's how people treat soccer in other countries is similar to how this goes in auto racing. And Americans aren't blameless in this in terms of how they handle other sports, football stuff. But I'm just the rabid fans of soccer in other countries where they're rioting at soccer games and all that stuff and racist and derogatory remarks being yelled at soccer. Like, these are the same people that are doing this to race car drivers. So in that respect, unfortunately, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah. As far as other silly, I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot to come out. It's just kind of like, Devlin DeFrancesco is going to be on the move. Stingray Rob brings a budget. Not sure if he lands somewhere. He could stay at Coyne. That's a possibility, according to Pruitt. Andretti's decision between 3 or 4 cars. Simon Pagenaud, obviously, once he gets healthy, is still fighting to be back on the grid, obviously. And then, you really just get down to it. And there's, does Callum Ilott stay? I mean, based on what has happened recently,
I don't.
I mean, he's
I don't know if anybody else out there wants him.
That's really kind of like the one thing that feels more up in the air suddenly, even after he confirmed he was going to be back with the team in 2024. Before the race, but yet things left off. It's not very positive.
No, not at all. But I don't know how much of his star is still shining, or if it's dimmed a little bit based on his performance this season. He was all right, but I don't think he wowed people like maybe they were expecting.
Yeah, and then one other note. This is from Feeder Series Americas for car count for Indy Lights: 21 to 22 cars at St. Pete for next year. That's
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, is that the max? Are they talking? Or that's what's expected, or that at the low end?
Expected.
Gotcha.
So anything, once you get above 15, it feels like gravy for that series, and you get closer to 20, and that's ideal. Anything above 20 would be outstanding.
Definitely. It seems at the very least that Indy Lights is reasonably healthy in comparison to what it has been in recent years in terms of car count and investment. And it helps that HMD has 8 million cars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing we got to consider. Like, if you take HMD out of the equation, you're at 11 or 12. So, I guess that's better than not, but I'm just saying it's how much you're relying on one team.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, they are the bulk of that series, but you take it.
You do. Absolutely, you take it.
They're making that grid look very full. All right, if you agree or disagree with us, let us know. You can find us newtrackrecordpodcast.com. Either sign up for the email list. It is free. You won't miss an episode or any special announcements. Plus, we have T-shirts and stickers for sale. On social media, IndyCar Podcast on Instagram, on Twitter or X. Just search for New Track Record on Facebook. Our email address, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com. And on Patreon, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. Thanks to Xavier, Rob, and several others for their support. Again, you can help us out. $1 a month is all it takes to be a supporter of us on Patreon. And as always, you can download us for free on your favorite podcasting platform: Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Overcast, CastBox, wherever you listen to podcasts, all for free. Mailbag time, Justin, and we have a lot to get to this week. So let's go back to what we had last week. Some couple of notes. And I know you had a poll talking about football, a couple of things from Poet Shevchenko here, talking about race control, saying enjoying the race control rants in the podcast is from last week. No one expects the Indy Inquisition. And then added one more thing on race control. As you said, race control not wanting to be a part of the title fight makes them apart. In addition to fuel strategy and tire strategy, there's now race control strategy. See how much you can get away with without penalty.
Yeah, or if you know somebody that's on race control, maybe you can get away with something. Or if you're a power team, or if you're involved in the championship as opposed to not. That's all the different dynamics and variables that can factor in seemingly to race control. That may not be the case, but it sure as hell looks like that's the case.
This from R. Cole. I'm with you guys. Once college football and the Lions have started, it's hard for me to pay attention to watch IndyCar. If your diehard fans aren't paying attention as much, that's not great. Littered PDX said, the reason Formula E, so this is the fan who told us, the reason Formula E looks so packed in Portland, the fans only had access to a quarter of the track. There's no true GA tickets where you can wander the circuit, seeing limited to the front stretch, and that's it. RV spaces were 20% of IndyCar, which is always sold out. And we talked about some other elements of that too. So added suites, so that's why that event looks bigger. Your poll on, following the season finale, 48% said we'll watch the race, 33% locked in all weekend, 10%, 10.5%, season's still going, 8% may flip around football. I mean, these are IndyCar fans, so of course they're going to give a different response. But 100's Away 67, our buddy Steve said, I'm here, so that should tell you my response. He had some good pictures there from over the weekend. I watched this live. I didn't expect to be, super entertained, but here we are. It was at least an intriguing race. I don't know if it was a good race, but it was an intriguing race. And also, this from Milk 1977, telling us I'm camping at the Laguna Seca finale. Camping sold out, he heard. So that
good.
Just goes to kind of show.
I mean, in terms of the crowd, what'd you think?
It was solid.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't come to mind like so many races, season finales in recent years. You've looked at it and go, oh man, that's not good. I mean, it didn't hit like that, which I think is a step in the right direction.
And people kind of responding to the Bruce Martin article, and I thought this was good. FitJ 1983 said the indirect drive to survive effect: get fans into racing /F1, then they learn about other sports with better racing and leave F1.
I mean, I think it's a certain extent
it
a point.
It works though.
I don't know if they're bailing on F1, but if they watch Drive to Survive, they get into F1, and then all of a sudden they see that, there's another open wheel series that's more in the United States or North America at the very least, and that can suck people in. I think there is an indirect impact on IndyCar in a positive way from Drive to Survive. I think it's too easy to say, well, Drive to Survive purely helps Formula One, because I don't think that's true.
This from Arcole, missed the poll due to football, talking about being locked in. This from FitJ 1983. My 13-year-old just made the comment that the 06 sucks and is the worst driver in IndyCar. I tried to explain to him who Elliott was years ago.
Or like last year, or 2 years ago.
Yeah,
when he won the 500.
Not a good season, series finale for him on Sunday. That's for sure.
No, not at all.
I posted this. Would not have expected Laguna Seca to be a chaos race. Jeremy from HBG said it's going to rain frogs next. Stealth 1014 said, really? No need to hold back. Many drivers changing teams. That's a green light to go for it. Equipment is no concern. That was true.
Yeah.
It absolutely was true with that race and how things played out. All right, race or race time. What would you give this race?
I would give it a 7.
I'm going to go 8. I was entertained. It got a little silly at the end, but I mean, you had a lot of action. You had strategy. You had passing. You had race control.
Yeah,
at least in mucking up a race makes it more entertaining.
Right. Yeah, it was up there. It was better than I anticipated. That's for sure.
Jaron Dimmendahl. So I can't understand the first part. It's in Dutch, but he said -20. So not a fan.
The Dutch were not entertained.
No. Mom 2X over 2002 said race control gets a -2. On track drama a 9, overall 7. Yeah, that's pretty fair. Jeremy from HBG gave it pi, or whatever your favorite irrational number is. Also, I guess I had the keys after all. Jay McCourton gave it a 10. CJ9 only watched the second half, but from what I saw, so bad it's good. 10, kind of like Nashville West. I love that. So bad it's good. That's kind of how I felt.
It's a fine line, right, between boring and entertaining because it's being silly. So I think it was right on that line.
I would agree. 100-67, who was there, give it a 6. This one was brutal but interesting. You can't restart before the final turn. It doesn't work here. Get the leaders on the front straight. Then throw the green, please. I was there. It was a great weekend. That's some Canapino fans who flew up from Argentina. Yeah, moving the restart zone, I think, would do wonders.
I would absolutely agree.
Roto Doc gave it a 1.5, so not a fan. Jimmy B 44140 gave it a 9. It's funny these are all over the place. Bauer Racing, nice call on what a boring race it was. Yeah, they're wrong. Let's see what else. M Vaney, no higher than a 7. Certainly not boring, but I feel there's plenty of room for improvement. You need to work on consistency and officiating, which should lead to better driving standards. Too many chaotic races, which can be entertaining but also frustrating at the same time. Jay Blasteri gave it a 7, more enjoyable than past few Laguna Seca races. I'm glad every race isn't like this, but it was fun. Indy Oreo, this one is going to polarize on a 1 to 10 scale. And then he goes on to say, for what it's worth, my 1 yardstick is Laguna Seca 2001, when bad rules, not bad weather, were to blame for a ridiculously unrepresentative result. Rookie Scott Dixon should have finished P2 to Gilles de Ferran that day. Said the rule book made him P3 to P4. I'll have to do more investigating on what happened in that race. Poet Shevchenko gave it a 7. It was messy but not boring somehow. If you look at the finishing order and nothing else, Dixon, McLaughlin, Palou, Power, you think less happened than really did. Dutch Mika said, "Oh, this was a race?"
Oh, come on now.
Elena Camp, 99. 4, pretty disgraceful. GP World gave it an 8. And Danny Leo _racing gave it a 2.
Dang, all over the place.
Yeah. Quinn Live said, worst race ever, very disappointing.
Man.
Big D Kart 8.7. Everyone said the race would be processional. It was anything but. And Christos gave it a 1. Absolutely diabolical race. I, like others, trash the old Nashville tracks are causing wrecks. It turns out it's just these drivers.
It's amazing because I think there's 2 different segments of the IndyCar fandom, maybe more than 2. But in terms of these types of races, there's people that like them and people that don't like them. And I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong, but I think when you have fuel mileage and not a lot of excitement towards the front, that's the people that are happy that weren't happy with Laguna Seca, and then vice versa. The people that don't like the fuel mileage and all that stuff, they were entertained by Laguna Seca. So there's different elements of the fandom and what they deem a good race, quote unquote, good race. None of them are wrong, but they surely don't see eye to eye.
Yes, there are very, very different standards. And I think I have a couple other more rate the race things to get to because, again, this was by far, I think, the most polarizing rate the race I think we've had in quite some time. So some other entries, let's see here. I know we had one that came in on the Facebook page. This from Warren. 2, if I reject the chaos. 8, if I embrace it. The pace car running out of fuel is the whipped cream and cherry on top. That was good stuff there. So that's a look at rate the race again, all over the map on this one. So elsewhere on the mailbag, this from Phil Drazi. Keenert Dairy Farms, Cormaze this year, will feature Joseph Newgarden with IndyCar and him with the wreath and, punching kind of like raised fists and pouring milk over his head. That's, I think, in the Fort Wayne area. And I think they were the farm for the milk 2 years ago.
That does sound familiar, yeah.
So I remember that name. Arcole said, pre-race show too long. Race itself was below passing grade at 5. Can't wait for Nashville to be the finale. And the noon race time before football game. So that's another on rate the race. DeGuerra said, I've been following Ericsson's career for some 15 years. This is by far his worst performance ever. All it takes to forget how to drive a racing car is designed for Andretti. I'm astounded. Not a fan on the Ericsson, Rosenquist sweet-on-sweet crime in the race. You complained about the push notifications. J.P. Murley said this would be just the first problem in a list of issues that IndyCar media brings on itself. It is frustrating because, you have it turned off, right? That's the part that doesn't make any sense. And yet you still get them.
Yeah, I have them off. Well, I guess it's kind of my fault. So I didn't have everything off. I have IndyCar news and stuff off, the pertinent stuff that I thought would avoid me from seeing who won the race. And not just that, I can glaze my eyes to where I just swipe. But when the title of the push notification is Scott Dixon, blah 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 blah, it's like, okay, come on. And then they send you email and stuff. It's not smart because I have push notifications on for Formula One and I never see the race winner. They'll say what pops up is the race has been completed at Singapore. They'll say, entertaining race or a wet turned into a dry race. They'll give you a teaser, but they don't tell you who won. And then I get IndyCar at 2 hour, or it wasn't even 2 hours, that after the race that are letting me know that Scott Dixon won. I'm like, come on. It's amateurish. It's amateur hour.
At least the 24 hours, especially because, again, if you have the notifications off, don't spoil it.
Yeah, it's just, and hitting people with emails, and I know that's bitten you too.
Yep,
it's like
I get it spoiled with IndyCar shop every race. Like, but at least they wait until like that evening.
right.
Like, it's usually like 7, 8, 9 o'clock.
If it's the day after,
I'll give them some leeway there.
yeah. If it's the day after, it's fair game. If you want to hit me with IndyCar app with 8 million notifications on Monday morning about Scott Dixon, that's fine, but not an hour after the race. Not an hour. If you're throwing out a post-race push notification, make it vague, like Formula One does.
All right, so that wraps up the mailbag. News and notes, we have a few things to get to. First off, IndyCar staying patient with Motorsport Games, even though Dmitry Kozko resigned from the board of directors.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, not good. Oliver Askew, didn't mention his name, but he was hanging around IndyCar in Monterey, so maybe a name to keep an eye on moving forward. Nathan Brown has a story on this, but Zach Brown said McLaren F1 still has a hotel room in Singapore. Alex Flow's name, no expectation, obviously, that he's going to show up. Also note, Pato Award told NBC if he finished 4th or higher Sunday, he would obtain his super license. So he did finish high enough to obtain his super license, so good for Pato.
Yeah, that's nice.
Rinus VeeKay got engaged, looks like when he was out in California, so congrats to him. And new media negotiations. This was an interesting story only in the aspect that, like, we know that they're going to have a new TV deal come 2025. But the part that was really interesting, and we mentioned this before, when Mark Miles talking, cited Major League Soccer on Apple TV Plus, and then said, I think there are more players that are more focused on sports, and that would include the CW, which is a national free-to-air network that has almost 100% reach. I think that's, I mean, we talked about this before, and then Miles even goes in and talks about what we said before, as far as when Fox, they got rights and eventually got the NFL, and now they've been a mainstay for 25 years. But you go back 30 years ago, that was not the case. And the CW's trying to do that same thing. I mean, started with Live, then 100 Days of Indy. Now they have ACC football, and then men's and women's basketball coming this winter. They have Inside the NFL, so they're slowly working their way into getting some sports rights.
I wouldn't be surprised if at this time next year, IndyCar is going to have to make a decision whether they're going to go with more money or what they perceive as more visibility being on NBC. Because I could see the CW, and let's say it's around $20 million, which is what it sounds like annually that NBC pays IndyCar. I could see them offering double that for IndyCar. CW offering $40 million for IndyCar. And maybe NBC protects the Indianapolis 500 in a couple races, kind of like ABC did. But that could be a decision that IndyCar has to make in the near future on whether they're going to chase the money or are they going to stick with a solid partner that maybe they're not getting the money, but they feel is a more profitable or visual entity in NBC, not just over the air, but also with things like Peacock.
Yeah, I think, the streaming aspect is important. Getting all the races on network would be huge, even if it's between two partners. It's just kind of the process you go through. So I think there's some good momentum there. And again, we'll probably have answers on 2025, probably by Indy 500 2024. I
would imagine, or at the very least, things start getting really serious right around then.
Yeah. A couple other quick notes before we wrap things up. Michael Andretti closing in on getting his F1 entry approved by the FIA. Teams remain wary. This is not a surprise. There will be a historic IndyCar challenge for Long Beach in 2024, so that they announce that. That's pretty cool. And with that, time for tweets of the week. This from Andretti. Nashville 2021, Laguna Seca 2023, Spider-Men pointing at each other.
It's the meme that just keeps on giving.
Yes. Anything that we missed?
I don't think so. I think it was a more interesting final race of the season than you and I expected. Our expectations were, of course, low, but it delivered in ways that we didn't expect.
All right, time for a random split air driver of the week.
All right, we're going to the rookie season that is the Indy Racing League, and we're going with a guy that raced all of 3 races in 96 and the 96-97 seasons, and we're going with David Kudrave. You know of him?
I've heard of him because I think he's been one before.
Has he really? I didn't think we had David Kudrave. My list is incomplete, so maybe, but we'll go through Kudrave again. Made his kart debut in 1993, actually appeared in Euro Motorsport 93 and 94, and did, 7 races for kart in 93, and did not qualify and withdrew in 3 races in 94. Raced for Tempero Giuffre Racing in 96 and 97, 3 races.
That's why I remember him, the Tempero name.
Okay, and I'll make sure I put him on the list. But, if you're not a completionist and haven't listen to every single podcast we put out there, and first off, why haven't you? Is we're coming around and doing Kudrave again. But guy who was raised in California, he would go to Ontario Motor Speedway. He said he watched legends like Andretti and Foyt and others. He said that's kind of how he fell in love with the sport, began racing at 12 years old, which is actually kind of advanced for race car drivers, starting in karting a lot younger. Actually lied about his age to get into the Jim Russell British School of Motor Racing. He was 15, but told told people he was older than what he was, so he could get in, and was generally regarded as the most competitive amateur open wheel class driver in the nation, the Formula Ford circuit, and started driving Super V cars in the 80s and 90s. Did some kart, and then did the IRL. So 3 races. His top finish was Phoenix in 1996. Doesn't look like he tried to compete in the Indianapolis 500. Oh, because let's see, he was set to race in the 500 before a complication with his team prevented him from being able to participate in the race. After the 3rd round, Kudrave would not start another race in the season, and that's it. He was also his final race was at New Hampshire, finished 17th. In 1996, and the 96-97 IRL season was the final season of his racing career. And so that's it. Mr. David Kudrave, this week's Random Split Era Driver of the Week.
All right, that wraps it up for this episode. Next week, the first real episode of the off-season.
Let's go.
Hopefully we'll have a schedule to talk about.
Let's hope.
All right, for Justin Kinney, I am Caleb Hatch. Thanks for joining us on New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.